During the last weeks, Shara was giving this talk, culminating in this certain manner of the Buddha, affirmation, definite, bold and definite affirmation of the Buddha, to the fact that only in his Dhamma Vinaya, in his teachings, where there is the noble path of eight constituents, there are the samanas on the first stage, Sorapanna, samana of the second stage. Samana means the one who extinguishes kilesas, impurities. Samana of the second stage, Sakalagami, one's returner. And samana of the third stage, Anagami, non-returner. And the samana of the fourth stage, Arahant, the final stage. And that is what the Buddha has declared with definite and bold affirmation. And the Buddha has also given this practice. Also, Shara has explained both from the theoretical and practical aspects, how with the practice of the noble path of eight constituents, one is able to overcome kilesas to some extent, up to the point of no return. And today it says that he has come to the end of such topic. And in the meantime, we have taken a break about what happens to ascetic Subhadha Paripajika. Today is going to deal with how the change in the mentality of ascetic Subhadha has taken place, and how he became devoted to the Buddha Sasana and became the final stage of arahantship. As for the discourse itself, it is quite brief, and if one has got to talk about this, it will take only as long as only half an hour. It can be completed. Of course, in those days, people are well versed in this Pali language, so they are easily convinced. They were easily convinced with the talk, with the contents of the talk, or with the teachings, but not for us at this stage. So we need to explain this in detail. So in detail, both from the theoretical and practical aspects, such as the practice of the three paths, namely Mula Mega, the basic or fundamental path, Bhavabhaga Mega, preliminary path, or Purana path, and finally the Ariya Mega, the noble path, leading to the realization of the ultimate sensation. So, in the practice of Bhavabhaga Mega, preliminary path, it comes to the culmination of the practice of insight at the stage of Sankarupika Jnana, knowledge of the contemplation of equanimity about formations. And Shara has also explained the 6 qualities of this insight knowledge, such as the 3 qualities of equanimity and the 3 special qualities. So as for the this kind of qualities, it is quite necessary, especially for those in those parts of the world where science and technology have developed to very much in abundance, with lots of goods, consumable goods, and people are fulfilled with all the necessities. They had all the things they want almost. Seemingly they are able to satisfy their needs, but still they are not able to realize the true peace, because they are subject to all these social problems and ailments, and such as stress, tension, depression, all the mental ailments, mental diseases. So once one reaches this stage of Sankarupika Jnana, one will become neutral to all these objects, all the sense impressions, or all objects which they come across. And they will be able to solve this problem with equanimity, any problem which arises out of these things, with the deepening of mindfulness. They're able to do that. So, with this knowledge, with these qualities, one will be able to solve these problems, social problems. So, it has been praised at this stage, attributed this quality at this stage, that practicing with the practice of mindfulness by way of Satipatthana, as regards every sense impressions arising through the six sense doors, such as seeing, hearing, tasting, touching. If one is able to note these things, being mindful and fully aware, one will neither be glad nor sad about these sense impressions, about these objects. Instead, they will be able to consider them as neutral towards pain and pleasure, neutral towards desirable and undesirable things, so that there will be no gladness or sadness, no elation or dejection about desirable and undesirable things. So at this stage, one's mind is no different from the mind of an arahant. Such is the attribute given at the stage of the Sankarupa Jnana. As for an arahant, they are not affected either by good or bad worldly conditions. So at this stage, whoever is able to practice and attain this stage will be able to solve they will be able to find answer to social problems. By dealing with this talk on the practice of the path, and out of these three paths, as regards the Purvabhagamagga, the preliminary path, coming to the culmination of this insight, Sekapada, namely this Sankarupa Jnana, and from progressing along the path from Sankarupa Jnana to Anuloma Jnana, conformity knowledge, and from thence walking the right path, leading to the right destination, one comes to experience the ultimate position beyond the rising and passing away, being, with path consciousness fulfilled with the noble path. So by doing so, we have taken a break as regards the Buddha's discourse to ascetic Subhadda. And while Buddha was lying in his bed, nearing the Mahaparinibbana, the great passing away, he gave this discourse to ascetic Subhadda with great Mahakaruna, great compassionate feeling. And as for ascetic Subhadda also, he listened to this talk respectfully and carefully, attentively, and he was fully satisfied with what was given to him. So this is how the Buddha concluded. This is how the Buddha gave the last discourse to ascetic Subhadda. He said, at the age of 29, I renounced the world, donned robes and wandered in pursuit of the truth. In this case, Sabhajita Jnana. He wanted to know what is this omniscient knowledge, Sabhajita Jnana. So he went in search of that. From that time on, it has been over 50 years. Many years have lapsed. Because he renounced the world at the age of 29, and he attained Mahaparinibbana at 80, so it is 51 years, so over 50 years. And he went in search of the so-called the Dhamma Vinaya, or sublime Dhamma, a cause for peace and happiness in the world. Dhamma and Vinaya. Make Dhamma Vinaya, or dispensation, or sadhana, or teachings. So, at that time, there was not even this practitioner called Arada Vipassaka, the progressing yogi, in order to realize path consciousness. There was not even this Arada Vipassaka, which is a portion of the noble path, Ariya Mega, not to mention the existence or the realization of the first stage samana, second stage samana, third stage and fourth stage. At this stage it is used as nati, previous to that, it was used as na upalabhati. It is not possible, not available, or impossible, cannot be. So it is as good as saying that not possible means non-existent, none. So in whatever teaching there is no practice of the Eightfold Path, and that means no possibility of the practice of the Eightfold Path, that means the Eightfold Path is non-existent. It is not there. There is no practice of Eightfold Path. So only when if there is no correct practice, correct method of practice, there cannot be any practitioner. If there is no practitioner, there cannot be any samana who extinguish kilesas. So there cannot be any samana who possesses true knowledge. So it is not possible means it is non-existent. Here it is used non-existent, doesn't exist, absent, directly. Not even the Vipassana yogi, the progressing Vipassana yogi, Arada Vipassaka, which is a portion of the noble path, a noble person. Not to mention the samana of the first stage, second stage, and so on. Thus, this affirmation or assertion, bold assertion, saying that it is only in his dispensation, Dhamma Vinaya, and none other, in no other dispensation, in no other teachings other than his dispensation, is there any samana. All other dispensations, other teachings are void of the 12 kinds of samana, the one who extinguishes kilesas, as they profess. So the verse says that addressed to ascetics, Sayadaw, I will say this: if there is this noble path of 8 constituents, there can be this samana who has extinguished the kilesas. So if these 12 samanas, 12 individuals who have extinguished kilesas, practice rightly, conduct rightly, then the world, that means all the beings, the world where all the beings are living, will not be void of arahants. Such is the definite affirmation. So the Buddha has given this discourse to give the ascetic Sayadaw with definite declaration or affirmation at the near Nibbana, at the time of the near Nibbana, great passing away. And he stressed this: at this moment, a multitude of human devas and brahmas gave a lot of respect and veneration to the Buddha who was nearing his Nibbana. And he said, he told Ananda this, that by venerating, giving respect and giving veneration in this way, in a grand way, is not tantamount to the real or sublime veneration. He addressed to the 4 kinds of disciples: the monks, male monks, female monks, male supporter, female supporter. They make up 4 kinds of disciples. And what the 4 disciples are venerating to him was not the high level kind of veneration. Only when one practices the noble path of 8 constitutions as he instructed, will the 4 disciples be able to practice, to make the high level, the real respect and veneration to him. So this, he said, he wanted to stress the point that the Dhamma should be given preference. Dhamma should be respected. Dhamma should be emphasized instead of just emphasizing other things. Material veneration by means of material generosity. So, in many discourses during his lifetime, he had given discourses, he had told the beings that by even by offering a piece of a flower, for instance, that one can reach good destinies. He's praised the generosity, dana, in this way. But not so at this stage, at this point. Here he gave emphasis on the Dhamma, and this is something to think about, a food for thought for all of us. So, if only the Buddha had to stress from this point, that to emphasize on the veneration by way of Dhamma. Nowadays there will be a lot of veneration, material veneration to the monks, and one will not be able to practice the noble discipline of the three trainings of Sila, Samadhi and Panya. This will be overlooked if the Buddha had not given emphasis on the veneration by way of the practice of the Dhamma. So there's two reasons for saying this by the Buddha. One is to praise the audience at that time, the disciples, the four kinds of disciples at that time. And then another reason is for the long endurance of the Buddha Sasana or Buddhist culture. Now as for the first point, the praising of the audience or disciples, the Buddha wanted them to give emphasis so that to leave behind this good generation of practitioners, practicing the noble path of constituents, to be able to extinguish kilesas, thus leaving behind the future good generations. So that the sadhana also will endure for a long, long time. Thus also the good generation will sustain for a long, long time. And there are two kinds of veneration. One is amisa puja, material veneration, or veneration by way of giving things, and the Dhamma puja, the veneration by way of Dhamma practice. So as regards the first one, amisa puja, there we can build a lot of monasteries, 1,000 monasteries or more than that, or we can construct 1,000 pagodas or more than that. They will not be as good as one gulp of rice gruel when it comes to, when you compare with the Dhamma puja. So if one wishes to sustain this good generation, future generation, and to leave behind the sasana so as to endure long, one has got to practice, as I said, Dhamma Patipana, practice of the Dhamma. Practicing, for instance, the Bhagavad the preliminary path, and embarking on the progressive, embarking on the progressive series of insight until one experiences the ultimate cessation beyond the rising and passing away with path consciousness or more noble path, then become the real samana who extinguish kilesas. This will be tantamount, this will be conducive to leaving behind future good generations, and also at the same time for the endurance, this will be tantamount to the endurance of the Buddhist culture. So this Dhamma puja transcends many times this amisa puja. That means the veneration by Dhamma transcends the veneration by just generosity in terms of material gift. This Dhamma puja is Parama puja, the high level veneration, high level offering. What the yogis are practicing now are doing the same thing, the high level veneration by way of the practice of Dhamma, which is in accordance with Buddha's wishes, doing the high level practice, high level veneration every second of the time of the practice, which is very encouraging. So this is also you are also serving as a role model for future good generation of Dhamma practitioners. So with the practice of the Eightfold Path, with the existence, endurance of the practitioners, the Buddha Sasana also is sure to endure for a long, long time. So this is at the conclusion of this Subhara Sutta, the discourse on Subhara. I just mentioned that in the other denominations or teaching other than his teaching, there is no practice of the noble path of eight constituents, and not even the practitioner, not even the one who practices insight. At this point, the sub-commentators have further elaborated that not only the Vipassana practitioner, not even there won't exist, there will not exist even the literatures concerning insight or practice of Vipassana. They will be non-existent. So, for those who are teaching so-called Dhamma, and if there is no, they say that there is no need for the practice of Vipassana, what will happen? And those people who follow their teachings, who believe in their teachings, will they practice Vipassana at all? And if there is no practitioner of Vipassana, there will be no, if there is no practice of Vipassana or no practitioners, what will happen? How will be the situation? The world will be void of samana who possesses true knowledge. Now there is the two kinds of periods I need to explain. That during the period of Buddha's dispensation, that is sasana, and outside of Buddha's dispensation, Buddha's sasana, that is the era when the Buddha has not enlightened, and where there was no Buddha's teaching, such is called the era of non-sasana, non-existence of Buddha sasana. So we have to try to compare with these two principles given by the Buddha, that in absence of the practice of Eightfold Path, there cannot be samana who extinguishes kilesas. And another principle is, if there is the Eightfold Path, there can be the samana who extinguishes kilesas. So one has got to check up with these two kinds of principles. Then, if some teachers say that it is not necessary to undertake the practice of Eightfold Path, then it is the same as or equal to living in an era which is where the sasana is non-existent, or the Buddha has not even enlightened. So, in this way, there cannot be, if there is no practice of Eightfold Path, and this will be as good as, those people who are outside of this sasana will be as good as living in the era where the Buddha sasana is non-existent, totally non-existent. This is being given in the Samhita Nikana, the book of the Kindred Sayings, this Hani Sutta, about the decline or non-decline of sublime Dhamma, Sadhama. And if one doesn't practice Vipassana, that means one is not practicing Satipatthana, the way of mindfulness. Only when one practices mindfulness of these four kinds of objects, Kaya, Vedana, Citta, Dhamma, as it arises, obviously, will one be practicing the way of mindfulness. And only when one practices the way of mindfulness will one be practicing the noble path of eight constituents. Without the practice of Satipatthana, there will be no practice of Eightfold Path. So there are a few questions raised at this point to the Buddha. What are the causes for the decline and the disappearance of non-Sadhama, and what are the causes for the non-decline, non-disappearance of Sadhama, the sublime Dhamma, after the Buddha has attained Mahaparinibbana, the great passing away? So the answer to that is, if one does not practice the four Satipatthana, four foundations of mindfulness, then the Buddha Sasana will decline and disappear. On the other hand, if one practices, then the Buddha sadhana will not decline and will not disappear. So only when one practices the way of mindfulness, one will practicing the three trainings of Sila Samadhi Panya, the path of Sila, the path of Samadhi, the path of Panya. Then there will be this sadhana, will be alive. If one doesn't practice these three trainings, then the Buddha Sasana, the dispensation, the teachings are bound to disappear. Like those people who are preaching the so-called Dhamma, but not to encourage the practice of Vipassana, and those people who follow such teachers and believing in them. So in the commentaries has further given that if Satipatthana is not practiced, then the sasana will decline. If Satipatthana is practiced, sasana will not decline. That is what the Buddha said, and what the Buddha said is correct. Whosoever, he, she may be monk, male monk, female monk, man, woman, deva, Brahma, if whoever does not practice the way of mindfulness, Satipatthana, even while the Buddha is alive, then for him or her, Buddha Sasana Sadhamma is said to have declined or disappeared in him or her. Like people, like individuals like Devadatta during the lifetime of the Buddha. So if one is a nominal Buddhist, saying oneself as a member of a Buddhist faith, but one does not practice Satipatthana, and also one is following, one is teaching not to practice or believing in those teachings, then one will not be able to undertake the practice. If only one practices Satipatthana and the practice of Eightfold Path, will one be able to overcome the impurities, three kinds of impurities, coarse, medium, and refined, and become samana who has extinguished kilesas. From the minor or part-time, momentary cessation of kilesas, one has got to accumulate these minor or part-time cessations to actual, real cessation of kilesas, overcoming of kilesas, and become real samana. If you don't do anything, nothing will happen. If you do something, you will get something. So, if you don't do anything, then what will happen? You will be tortured and undermined by these impurities, defilements, and your life will degenerate like people like Devadatta. That's the Buddha's second assertion, that only when that is the Eightfold Path, there can be samana who extinguish kilesas, samana who possesses the true knowledge. So only when there is the Eightfold Path, there will be only Vipassana yogi, as well as samanas, attained persons, attained individual samanas or ariyas who have extinguished kilesas. In other teachings, where there is no practice of Eightfold Path, there cannot be the samana who extinguish kilesas, not even the practitioner of Vipassana. So as for ascetic Siddhartha, after he has listened to this, being possessed of the past perfections, be grounded in the perfection of the good deeds. In the past, he was very well convinced and satisfied. And he said this to the Buddha. But this will be continued tomorrow.